Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Now, I recently reviewed Elton John's 2004 album Peachtree Road. Now today I'm going to look at the B-sides that are linked to those recording sessions. I'm not going to be looking at Billy Elliot. Now, a few of those tracks are linked in various reissues to Peachtree Road. I will look at that whole musical separately, but we do have 6 B-sides to look at. And the first one is one that was linked to All That I'm Allowed in the UK. And this was a Bernie Taupin written, Elton John musical written song, Keep It a Mystery. Now, this has a bit of a mystery, a bit of a mystical start because the chords are in a minor key. It creates kind of an atmosphere of uncertainty. The song seems to be about a hidden love that will eventually be revealed. And it reminds me a little bit of that song Oscar Wilde Gets Out that we saw on the Diving Board album. That sort of rhythm to it, that sort of harmonic feel to it, perhaps. It's a fairly ordinary song, I think, maybe just okay. Perhaps not the best vocal that Elton's ever done, but it's quite an interesting song to listen to. I would rate this as an average song for Elton, and I would give it 4 out of 10. So the next one I'm looking at is So Sad the Renegade. Again, this came out with All That I'm Allowed, a companion piece to that. More Bernie Taupin lyrics. A real sort of country feel to this one, as there is with almost all the songs on this album. And they do fit together quite well. Some of my subscribers have criticised that. They don't think it's kind of unusual enough. And some have said, you know, they think it's a bit bland. But I'm not sure I agree with that. There's some interesting melodies and some interesting stories behind the songs on this album. Anyway, a good strong vocal from Elton on this one. There's a nice swing to the verse. It's about him wanting to settle down now. There's some good old cowboy imagery going on in this. And a very pleasant refrain, actually, with a nice hook in it. And if you listen to this 2 or 3 times, you do start humming this one. So it's a pleasant listen. Now, I would have liked to have seen this song on the album itself. In fact, I might have taken out I Stop and I Breathe, which wasn't my famous song. It wasn't my favourite song, sorry, from the album. So we could have tucked this one in, So Sad the Renegade, and that would have fitted in quite nicely. So I'm going to rate this as a very good song, actually, and give it 7 marks. Now, don't forget, if you're unfamiliar with any of these tracks, I've made a playlist called Elton John Rarities on YouTube, which I will link below. So if you want to hear any of them, just head over there. Now, the next one I'm looking at is a little piece, which came out again with All That I'm Allowed. This is kind of a spiky, funky song with a very positive peace message. He is saying in this, well, whether it's Elton or whether it's Bernie, they're both saying that kind of young people are getting blamed for a lot of problems in the world, but maybe they're not the ones to blame. The message is that, you know, we all want peace. I don't think anybody would argue with that. It's a question of how we get it, I suppose. I've recently reviewed Paul McCartney's Egypt Station album, and he's got a song on there, People Want Peace, which again is pretty good. So now Elton does name check John Lennon in this song, and we know they were good friends and respected each other's work and appeared together as well. And of course, Elton recorded Empty Garden in tribute to John Lennon. So it's not quite an anthem, this. It doesn't quite work as a sing-along anthem, but it's a decent listen. The refrain kind of takes the song in a slightly different direction than we were expecting, but the sentiments expressed here are worthy. And I think, you know, normally when we hear a lot of these B-sides, we're rather disappointed, but this particular collection of B-sides is actually quite interesting. And there's a lot going on in these songs. So I'm going to rate this as a fairly good song, and I give it 5 marks. The next one is How's Tomorrow, which appears on the B-side of Turn the Lights Out When You Leave. Elton launches straight into the verse in this one. It's a good storytelling song, this one. It's about sort of people on the verge of spending the rest of their lives together. Maybe somebody says to their partner, well, how about seeing me tomorrow? When they really mean, how about spending the rest of my life with you, or your life with me? So it's about this idea of perhaps wanting to settle down and how small moments can have a big effect on your life, on the direction it goes. So it's a fairly interesting song. It's a sort of piano ballad which does change direction with the refrain. It goes into a different key. Not everybody likes that, but see what you think to it. It's an okay song. Perhaps doesn't stick in the memory as much as some of the other ones, but I reckon it's a pretty average song, so pretty decent listen. I'll give it 4 marks. Now the next song is Peter's song, which also accompanied Turn the Lights Out When You Leave. Now this seems to be about Peter Pan and Neverland. Was this used in the film? I can't quite find out much about this track, so if you do know more about it, please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, it's a pleasant guitar and vocal verse, this one. An interesting lyric, this one from Bernie. We see our childhood pass, we grow up, but let's enjoy the fantasies, kind of the message that's coming through there. The verse is strong. The refrain perhaps doesn't quite match up to the verse on this one. But this creation of this fairy tale world is quite pleasant, you know, and Elton is strong on these songs he writes for various sort of family films and things, done plenty of them very successfully. So I reckon this is a fairly good track, and it's certainly an oddity and a deep cut worth exploring. I'm going to give it 5 marks. Now the last one to look at here is Things Only Get Better with Love. Again, this was linked with the Turn the Lights Out When You Leave release. We've got a gentle piano opening to this, and the message here is I will protect you. What would I do for this love? I'll walk through fire with you. So it's kind of a almost a commitment of love, how much I love you, and you know, what I do to preserve this love. There's a catchy refrain, but it all gets quite excited, actually, this one. And I suppose the question that came into my mind was, is the mood of the song, the melody, quite right for the gentle love song lyrics? Judge for yourself on that. We get some quite jagged rhythms in the centre bridge, which is maybe a little bit of a shame, but it does build well towards the end, and it's quite an exciting ending to this one. It probably, I feel, it would have worked better just as a piano ballad, just Elton and the piano, maybe just calming the whole things down. I would compare it maybe to something like If the River Can Bend from The Big Picture, that sort of build-up of a song. Quite enjoyable to listen to, and I'd certainly give it a go if you don't know it. I'm going to rate it fairly good and give it 5 marks. So just before I go, a few comments you've sent in about Peachtree Road so far. James enjoys Porch Swinging Tupelo. It's a popular song, that one, which of course is based on Elvis Presley's childhood. Now Mark has sent in some comments. He sent in an analysis of All That I'm Allowed, perhaps suggesting that I might have misinterpreted that song, and I think it's fair enough what he's saying, actually. So have a look at his comments underneath the original video and see if you agree with how he's analysed. He's gone into quite a lot of detail, so thanks very much for those comments. Now Dirk, who's another regular contributor, has given his ratings for each song. I won't go through them all, but he's marked them quite a bit lower than most of my marks, actually. Way to the World, he only gave 5. Answer in the Sky, 5. Turn the Lights Out When You Leave, he only gave 4, and I gave that 7. And They Call Her the Cat as well. I think I gave that a 6. He's given it a 4. So, you know, opinions do vary on this. The point he's making is that he thinks some of those B-sides, which I've just reviewed here, are better than some on the album. And I agree with most of his ratings for the B-sides there. So, you know, opinions differ, of course, and some people like this one and some people are not so keen. Lost Dog says he thinks that this album is as good as Tumbleweed Connection. Well, I don't think I'd quite go that far, actually, because Tumbleweed is a work of consistent genius all the way through, and I've rated that as the best Elton John album, track for track, so far. But anyway, that's an interesting view. 007 reckons that the whole album is musically safe and rather predictable and not as strong as The Captain and the Kid or songs from the West Coast. So again, he's saying he likes Porch Swinging Tupelo, 7.5 out of 10. He likes Turn the Lights Out When You Leave, fair enough. Not keen on My Elusive Drug, which I gave quite a reasonable mark to that one. Freaks in Love, All the Time Allowed, 7.5. A lot of people like that song. But overall, not that impressed with that album. So, if you've still got comments to add about the album or your individual ratings, please drop them below. Now, Mark, who's another regular contributor, has a bit of a warning over this. He thinks the album is a depressing disaster. He'd bought All the Time Allowed as a single, but maybe was regretting afterwards. And he's got some very detailed comments, which I will read through. It's a shame, isn't it? We've all got different opinions about the albums. What I feel about most of Elton's albums is that there's always some good things on them, even if you don't like all of the songs. There's usually 3 or 4 tracks which are, ones you want to hear again and again. And the better albums are the ones where the other tracks are also good. For instance, Tumbleweed or Madman. And I don't think this is a bad collection, actually, this one. There's nothing stand out. There's nothing that's going to be in my sort of 8s, 9s and 10s necessarily. But there's quite a few 7s and 6s on here, and I think it's a reasonable collection. And if I was going on a car journey, I quite often pick up these albums from the 2000s and 2010s because I just like the feel of them. I don't know. I pick up Wonderful Crazy Night quite a lot to play in the car. It's not a classic album, but I just enjoy the feel of it. So, but obviously not everybody is going to like that. And when we compare it with the 1970s, it doesn't really compare, does it? Except to say this is the same artist, but this artist has gone through different periods. I'm not that keen on some of the 1980s stuff. I love the 70s. I love the 2000s and the 2010s, actually. But I don't discard the other albums either. So, each to their own, of course. We can't all like everything. Anyway, keep those comments coming in. And I'll be back with more on Elton John soon. My next video is probably going to be looking at his best tracks from the 2000s. And I can do that now that I've reviewed this CD in detail. See you soon. Subscribe if you want to. Don't forget, we're still standing.